Let's get started. Welcome everybody. My name is Marty Huseman. I'm from White County, and I'm standing in for Jeff Burbank and Shaylee Bradley today for the Field Crops Focus Group. This is our August 5th crop and weather report. Here in White County, we received some much needed rain over the last 2 weeks, so we're in a much better place now. We'll start with Beth Hall and what's happening in weather.
All right. Start off with a temperature recap. This is just for the last 30 days, and temperatures have been cooler. Now, they're still warmer than normal, but what I showed, I think a couple weeks ago on our call, the reds were a bit redder. And if you look and compare the three maps that I'm showing here, the map on the left is the average temperature. The one in the middle is the minimum. And that's the one that is showing the greatest departure from normal, because you can see that even the maximum temperatures, it's really was only 1 or 2 degrees, maybe 3 above normal, but it was those nighttime lows that were bringing that overall average up. So things have been cooler the last couple of days, which are nice. We are expecting things to warm up, and I'll show you that map in a little bit. All right, growing degree days. So the map on the left shows the accumulated growing degree days as with the start date of April 1st, and the map on the right shows what the departure from average is based on the 1991 to 2020 average. And these are in units, but I did want to try and translate that to how many approximate days ahead of time that is. And for this time of year, we typically accumulate around 23 growing degree day units, modified growing degree day units a day. So the real red bullseye, if you will, near center of our state suggests that things are about 6 days ahead of schedule there. But you can see around, like along the Ohio River area, things are very close to normal, and even north of central Indiana. So not too much, even with that heat, I wouldn't say it shifted things by too many days, except for in that bullseye area. This is the latest drought monitor, U.S. drought monitor that was released last Thursday that considered data through last Tuesday, so a week ago. And there has been significant improvement just even then. And then you can imagine with any sort of rain and cooler temperatures since last Tuesday that there should be some improvement. I'll show you the draft that I'll be submitting to the U.S. National Author later today. But essentially, most of the state is drought-free, as was talked about in the very beginning. Some parts in southern Indiana are extraordinarily wet. So the question is for northern Indiana, how long can we expect that drought-free area to last? Looking at the last 30 days of precipitation, the map on the left shows the total precipitation amounts for the last 30 days, and you can see quite a few pinks in there, which suggests that just in 30-day period, over 8 inches have fallen. In other areas, the even pale blue is 6 to 8 inches, so that's quite extraordinary. And then the map in the middle just shows what that translates to in terms of departure from normal, or you can assume average, in inches. So check out those really strong blue dots periodically all around the state that's saying that's like 4 or 5 inches above normal. Also, I want to highlight with these maps how spotty it is across the state. And that is pretty typical, actually, of summertime precipitation, just because it's more what we say convective or localized in nature. So we don't really have huge spatial areas that are necessarily one way or the other. And you can even see with the map on the right and in the middle where it compares in terms of percent of normal, that there are areas that were just very near normal and some that were less than normal over that 30-day period. So just over the small spatial extent of our state, we have seen some pretty impressive extremes in precipitation, that there are winners and losers, if you will. Moving on to soil moisture, how does this all translate? There, the map on the left is at our sensors at a 4-inch depth at the mesonet around the state, and the map on the right is 8-inch depth. In general, the soils, if you see values 30 or 30% or higher, then that means we're at field capacity. So for quite a few of the stations, you see things even significantly above 30, particularly in the south, where I'm seeing at our FPAC Purdue Ag Center in Lawrence County, 41%. So things are wet all around. The exceptions are the two further north that are more northwest, the PPAC and the ASIL site. Those are extraordinarily sandy soils. In fact, the ASIL site is pretty much just sand that our sensors are in. And then way down in Knox County, SWAPAC, that is a sandier soil. So we would expect the soil moistures to be a bit lower there. Now, for us to get to the wilting point in a sandy soil, that's about a 9% soil moisture. So even though they look low, and ASIL is that low, even PPAC and SWAPAC are not quite there yet. Want to have another shout out. Again, thank you to all county agents. And even if you're not designated to a county, if you're more regional, you can still fill out these reports. This is the map that I pulled, I think, around lunchtime yesterday to just show really who all is saying what and what your recommendations are. And again, I read through all of them. Some in the southern area, I was noticing that people were saying that, we just haven't gotten a lot of rain. And maybe impacts weren't shared so much, and it's really the impacts that we need to know. So when you give a recommendation of either abnormally dry, moderate drought, or even denata, what are you seeing so much around your area? And I have examples up here. Some of you were saying, pond and creek levels are still low, subsoils are still quite dry, even though it seems like we got a lot of precipitation on top. Is there any sort of corn stress that you're seeing? What are you seeing that is putting it in that level? And so that helps me, because then I can share that with the national author. So if you ever see the national author just is not doing what you think is right, I really need to see, so what are you seeing on the ground? And they do listen, they do read that. So this is what I have, will be proposing to the national author later today. And again, it's totally up to them whether they want to accept it or not. So we're going to be spreading, I suggest they spread the D0, which is abnormally dry category, up along our Michigan border. There were quite a few comments, if you remember from the previous slide, that says, hey, we are seeing some impacts, those low pond and stream levels. But it really didn't seem like it included the whole county when I looked at some other products. Over in Ohio, I work with a state climatologist over there, Aaron Wilson, and we coordinate. And he said that really where you see that D0 blob on our eastern side, they're seeing it on their western side. And then I work with Trent Ford, the state climatologist over in Illinois. And so these lines there kind of line up with him. There was that one D1 zone in the north central part of the state. I like to describe it as a elf shoe, if you will. And just because of all the rain that we got lately, I am not ready to say there's no drought there, but I was downgrading it. And it is possible that we'll have to, I guess, upgrade the drought, saying things are worsening depending upon how much rain we get looking into the future. So this map I pulled yesterday afternoon, and I just looked this morning to see how the most recent updated map looks, and it's fairly similar. So you can see, though, in northern Indiana, this is total precipitation that's being predicted over the next 7 days. And even though there is a light green shading in our area, that's pretty much just between 100th and 1/10 of an inch in northern Indiana. So that's why I'm thinking perhaps next week we could be introducing more D0, and depending upon high temperatures, are things going to dry out? Now, this morning's map is very similar, except it's suggesting more between 1/10 and 1/4 of an inch for northern Indiana. Unfortunately, for those of you who are in southern Indiana, you're still getting the lion's share of precipitation, it seems, for what's coming through. So I don't see a lot of drying out for you, at least over the next 7 days. Also, I tried to step forward to see when is this rain supposed to happen, because I know for me in Tippecanoe County, it doesn't look like any rain is forecasted even through the end of this week into Saturday. So most of the rain I know in northern Indiana is probably going to be at the beginning of early next week. So Monday, Tuesday-ish, if you will, maybe late Sunday. Again, for those of you in the southern part of the state, this wetness is going to be possible, I think, every day. Looking further now into our climate outlooks. And so outlooks vary from forecasts. Forecasts can tend to give more specific numbers, like I showed you on the last slide. Outlooks are more probabilities of being warmer or cooler, and then probabilities of being wetter or drier. So that's how we distinguish between, are we giving you a forecast or an outlook? The top row is for the next 6 to 10 days. And so that represents August 9th through 13th. So starting this weekend into early next week. And for the temperature, first of all, very strong confidence that temperatures will be above normal. Not necessarily how much above normal, but we're very confident that they will be above normal. And then you can see here, because that 6 to 10 day period for precipitation includes the beginning of next week, there is a little bit stronger confidence that precipitation will be above normal during that time period. Extending out further, so August 11th, so most of next week, again, pretty strong confidence that our temperatures are going to be above normal. And even precipitation, it is favoring above normal precipitation, with, unfortunately, our southern counties, us having even more confidence that it will be above normal precipitation in that time. The monthly temperature and precipitation outlooks were just released last Thursday on July 31st, and this is for August. So for temperature, most of the state, it was the models were inconclusive. So equal chances of temperatures for this month being either above or below. What I usually interpret that to mean, just from experience, is it could be that part of the month is going to be warmer than normal and another part's going to be colder than normal. So when the models tried to reconcile a general answer for the month, because you had just so much of these strong swings one direction or another, it couldn't settle one way. Same with precipitation, that it's calling really for most of Indiana equal chances that the month, by the end of the month, we could have seen extremes, both very dry and very wet. And then the seasonal outlooks, I believe these are the same as perhaps what I showed last time we got together, where the August, September, October 3-month period, again, significant favoring towards warmer than normal temperatures over that 3-month period, but pretty much no guidance with respect to precipitation. And I believe that is my last slide. Yes, because there were no hazards that were in the outlooks that I wanted to let you know about. So are there any questions?
Well, we can be glad for that. Thank you, Beth. We
All
don't need the
right.
hazards, do we?
No hazards. Yeah.
So, hey, let's move on to agronomy. Lyndon, Kelley, you got anything you can share with us?
Sure. Lyndon, Kelley here. I talk about irrigation if you don't remember. Today we're looking at crop water use for the week of about 1.6 inches. We've had a little reprieve the last couple weeks, but surprisingly, rainfall hasn't met irrigation or crop water needs for about 6 of the last 8 weeks. So a lot of your irrigators are getting a little bit on the tired side, so you'll see that. I'll send Marty I'll send you a couple slides that if you're working with an irrigation group, you could show them how we're coming up with an irrigation recommendation. Also, there's a link in there for a new soybean irrigation management bulletin that should be available this week. It was supposed to be up this morning, but I can't find it. So look for that. MSU Extension Bulletin 3530, soybean irrigation management. And then last but not least, if you have any upcoming meetings, I would like an opportunity to do either a table display or a short discussion about as an irrigator, are you ready to defend your water use? This comes back from Indiana's Senate Bill 28, giving landowners with large or significant, as Indiana calls them, volume water uses, the ability to take each other to the state and try to mediate some type of resolution. And because of that, I think a number of irrigators should be concerned about, are they ready to be able to talk to the neighbors and the state Department of Natural Resources about their water use. Any questions I could answer about irrigation?
Well, thank you, Lyndon.
Hey, Marty, it's Shaun. Can you hear me?
Yes, what's happening in the world of soybeans?
Well, all the haves and have-nots continue all growing season here, so we've definitely got those both in terms of development because of the field conditions we had from the beginning of the year. Those down in the southeast, certainly I was there last week with soybeans that are V4, V5, and then those that are coming into R4. So there's a little bit of everything going on across the state as we think about the weather that we've had recently. We've definitely got areas that probably are now more prone to some disease development. I'm sure Darcy, if she's back, we'll talk about some of that. But these wet conditions, high humid, high dew points that we've had in the past week, probably set us up for some potential. I'm not saying it's there, but some potential. So I know a lot of people, and I even told people to hold off on fungicide sprays because of earlier, a few weeks prior to that, it was dry. Canopy was low or short, and so there wasn't much there in terms of an opportunity for that disease development. So kind of be mindful of that if we're still in the proper growth stages. I normally think R3, R4, and Darcy again can speak to this more. To be on the lookout for that if there are price points for them and the potential disease threat. A couple of years ago, white mold came a little bit later than we anticipated. Again, I think if we continue to have this range in growth stages, and so we need to be mindful of what stage the fields are at, and if we've had the history of it, and then the flowers are present, that's going to be the entry point for that pathogen. And so again, to be mindful of that, and it is a different fungicide if we run that route. Growth and development in terms of just nutrition. I do like taking leaf samples, and so multiple leaf samples could be taken throughout the year. And like recent weeks with a large amount of rain, we're going to see fields that are going to have the nitrogen deficiency show up because of saturated conditions. The root systems are starting to die, as well as nodules and that fixation. So we'll kind of identify some of those potential swings. The other part that comes to mind, it is state fair time, and so be on the lookout. State fair disease. Again, I feel like I'm doing Darcy's bit here by accident. Didn't mean to do that, but be mindful. I have been seeing SDS show up throughout the state, and that's going to be in concert with is their brown stem rot or the red crown rot. So a lot of this kind of going with the development of the crop and how it changes. At this point, when we think about beans are in R4, R5, we've got some that are definitely R5. So beginning seed, we're putting on 3 to 4 bushels per acre per day in a good looking field. So a lot can happen, and so be mindful of that. So otherwise, I'm just kind of here to answer any questions if you got any.
All right. Well, thank you, Shaun. So I see Marguerite Bolt, our hemp specialist, is online. Marguerite, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, we had our field day last week at the agronomy farm. So a group of about 30 people that came out and toured the plots, listened to some of our hemp farmers that are growing in the state of Indiana, so they do exist, and hear about some of the different product applications. So there's some animal research going on. And anybody who does like backyard chicken programs may be interested to talk with myself and Sarah Clough from Animal Science, because you can feed hemp meal to your chickens for commercial laying hens, but also there's a lot of interest from backyard poultry producers sourcing hemp meal since it is so high in omega-3 fatty acids. and can improve the egg quality. So if you are interested or have programs that are focused on backyard chickens, I'd love to talk with you all about maybe incorporating some hemp education materials into those programs. And then we also work with food science on some product development. So there's some kind of cool research going on here on campus that we were able to share at the field day. Things are looking really good out in the field right now. We've started harvesting some of our fiber genetics. So once plants reach a specific flowering stage, we cut them down. One of our fiber growers in the state has harvested his fiber as well because he's growing CBD hemp. So if you had worked with any growers who are producing for CBD, it's an all-female system, so you don't want any pollen flow. So he harvested it a little bit early so he could mitigate any sort of pollination in his CBD crop. With the grain crop right now, any sort of early maturing, sorry, my dog is barking, any early maturing varieties are getting hit pretty hard by finches. So bird management is a big issue in hemp, especially on small plot research. So I deal with birds pretty extensively destroying the grain heads. They just sit there and pick at the seeds, including immature seeds. So I'm netting plots and spraying methyl and thranolate, putting up flash tape, trying to get them to sort of avoid the early maturing hemp. But if you really like finches and you happen to be at the agronomy farm, please come out. There's like dozens and dozens of goldfinches and lots of doves as well, which is a question I've gotten from some stakeholders if they can plant hemp grain as like a dove food plot. And there are acreage minimums. They're 10-acre minimums, so that might be a bit of a challenge. But maybe in the future, they'll lower that, and that could be a potential option for dove hunting. But yeah, the plants overall look really healthy. We have some genetics that are over 10 feet tall. The plants are becoming really aromatic, so it's pretty stinky out there in the field. But it's been a pretty successful growing season this year.
Tommy Butts, our weed specialist, will not be on today. He's doing a speaking engagement this morning, and so but he did send along a couple surveys, and I'll try to get them posted in the chat, or I'll send them out when we get the recording after this meeting. But the first one is the state of our soybeans. I'm going to read this. It's a state of the soybean survey where we are gathering soybean management information, perspectives on intensification methods, including double cropping and intercropping, and the economics regarding these management strategies. This survey will take 15 to 20 minutes to complete and can be found on this link that I'll send out to everybody. The second survey is the Endangered Species Awareness. I guess it's Endangered Species Act Awareness survey, where they are investigating how these regulations might impact growers' operations, the awareness of these regulations, what concerns there are in regarding this legislation. The survey will provide some very important insights that will be able to share with the legislators and regulators at the EPA. This one should take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. So, like I said, I'll try to put those in the chat here in a little bit. And so if you have any questions for Tommy, go ahead and reach out. So moving on, I'm going to look for PPDL, John Bonkowski. Do you have anything to report, John?
I do. Thank you, Marty. Good morning, everybody. So, as Shaun mentioned earlier on, there's definitely SDS popping up now. Darcy mentioned back during the last call, or at least one of the previous calls, to keep an eye out for any of the pockets of disease issues that might be popping up. Well, SDS is popping now, and we've actually had another red crown rot case. So we have a new spot in the state, in particular in Warren County on the western side of the state. So just keep an eye out for any red, pink discoloration around the base of the crown for soybeans, especially in these little hotspot areas. A lot of the symptoms in the foliage do look very similar between SDS, brown stem rot, and red crown rot. You can also have these with white mold as well. So stem canker, they all look very, very similar. So of course, if you're seeing those symptoms, look farther down the plant, and I would recommend collecting a whole plant, dig it out, dig out the roots with a little bit of soil, and send it in the lab for verification. There could be more than one thing present, so we would still like a sample where possible just to see what else we might find, because we might have red crown as well as SDS in one spot, even though you might see the particular symptoms for SDS at that one time. So that's the big thing I wanted to say. We're still getting a lot of tar spot and southern rust samples, so please, of course, recommend anybody who has a suspicion that they have southern rust or tar spot to send those in. Darcy will be covering those samples as well as red crown rot samples, so those fees the smears don't have to worry about. And then with tar spot, even photos for especially new counties, but if anybody just wants to confirm that it is tar spot, later season, it's easier to verify by photo, but if there is a very low level of disease and you also see thrips injury, of course, we would probably want to sample just to verify to make sure it's not thrips frass. Lastly, foliar disease problems on soybeans. I've actually been getting a number of samples that people are thinking that they're seeing frog eye leaf spot, but I have yet to see any frog eye this year. Now, a lot of the symptoms may look kind of similar, especially if you have just a necrotic spot in the foliage. We do have some evidence of just injury, whether it's an application over the top of the soybeans causing that kind of damage, but we're also seeing a lot of downy mildew. So I would say just keep an eye out for those kind of symptoms, and if you suspect frog eye, please send it in, because like I said, a lot of people are thinking they have frog eye, but they do not. So it's better to make sure it's not the disease problem you're worried about, so they don't have to spray and maybe waste money on that application.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate it. Appreciate the update. Indiana State Chemist, Joe Bocovitz.
Good morning. Things continuing on, I'll say as normal. We had 12 new complaints last week related to agriculture. 10 of those were ag drift. Half were aerial, that as you might expect this time of year. We also had a couple of alleged bee kills crop up, which is something else you might also expect this time of year since they're applying fungicides and insecticides. We appear to be, I know, on the aerial thing, I was hoping, since we are seeing more drone applications versus plane applications, although plenty of them are still made by plane, I was hoping that people might be less freaked out by drones, but it appears they're more freaked out by drones than they are by the planes. I don't know if they see these drones as an invasion of privacy because they think they're spying on them or what, but the phone calls when people are calling in about a drone application are even a little more off the wall than the aerial application is. The manure applications are starting to ramp up also because they're starting to truck manure into the fields, and we've even had some actual applications being made. I would ask the educators just to remember when you're talking to people that the piles have to be covered or bermed, either or, within the 72 hours. It's pretty typical for us to get a complaint from a homeowner and they're mad because the pile isn't covered. And of course, it doesn't have to be covered. And most of these piles in Indiana are not going to be covered just because of the size of the piles. Most facilities are choosing to berm the pile, not cover it. So just make sure they understand it's one or the other. Also remind educators, we have that little front and back cheat sheet on fertilizer staging an application. And if any of you need that, either let me know, send me an email, or let me know somehow, and we've got an electronic version that I will be happy to email to you. So other than questions, that's my report.
Well, thank you, Joe. Do you want to make any statement about the clean sweep coming up?
I be honest, I haven't looked at the places for a while, but
Okay.
I'm sure all of them are coming up in August. They're going to be spread around the state in 5 or 6 different places. It's posted to our website, so if you get there, you can see where all of the locations are. There's always one in Hendricks County later in August that coincides with the Indiana Professional Lawn and Landscape Association meeting. And that one is sort of a permanent site just because we collect so much there, and it's a central location. So,
Okay. So I just kind of resent out to my group uh, on clean sweep, and I put my top 5 reasons for to take advantage of clean sweep. One was eliminate unsafe stockpiles and aging chemicals. 2, improve future pest and purchasing management. Low or no cost, legal compliance, and reduce liability. And number 5 was my environmentally sound and safely managed. So my little kick on the clean sweep program, just to get a reminder out that it's coming right up here, starting on the 11th and or 12th and running through the 21st of the month, depending on where you're at.
and Marty,
Uh
I'll give them one more reason, and I'll probably get killed for saying this, but
huh.
EPA, if you don't know, EPA's had a lot of cuts in personnel and a lot of potential cuts in their funding. And if that stays true, it's very possible that the Clean Sweep program could disappear altogether in Indiana or be funded a lot less than it is right now. I mean, we don't know for sure, but if you have something out there that you want to get rid of, go through the process. We need to know you're bringing it because we have to budget accordingly, but this might be the year to take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a good piece of information to know, Joe. Appreciate that. Anybody have questions for Joe? Well, that'll be our show for August 5th, and next program is going to be September 9th. So it'll be a little over a month. And so we thank all our guest contributors, and hopefully everybody has had a good county fair, and hopefully get to see some of you folks down at the state fair here over the next few days. So take care, everybody. Thanks for being on.